Secretary Scanlan. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me today, right as the primary is underway. Starting off, I want to go into a question that a lot of people have right now. When should we expect the first real batch of results to come in for this contest?
Well, most of the polls in New Hampshire close at 7 o'clock. And then there are a handful, maybe 15 or so, that close at 8 o'clock. I would expect the results will start coming in sometime after 8 o'clock. But we should have most results in before the night is over, probably 11 o'clock or so.
Do you know of any delays that are going on at the moment at any particular polling sites?
I'm not aware of any delays. The one issue that we have in this election that is unique is that President Biden chose not to file for the new placement on the New Hampshire ballot. There is an aggressive write-in campaign going on to write his name on the ballot. So there will be a fair number of write-in votes that have to be counted at the end of the night. It's one race on one ballot, vote for one. The moderators in those towns have enlisted additional help with that hand counting, so it should go fairly quickly.
There's also a write-in campaign just to write ceasefire in protest of the war going on in Gaza. When people write that down, that's going to actually go down as a candidate, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the word ceasefire will be counted. What we don't know is that there are candidates in the past that have legally changed their name to unique names that don't sound like a person. There was a candidate in the past who went by Human, all lowercase letters. We have Vermin Supreme, who is on the ballot. There's another individual whose name is Paperboy Love Prince, who is on the ballot. And so you really don't know whether the term ceasefire is somebody's name or not. We are aware of the write-in campaign that's out there and what it means. But the bottom line is that those votes will be tallied and they will reported just so that there's complete transparency with the election.
When there's a write-in campaign, what's sort of the line between when you're writing someone, did they mean this? Did they not mean it? Say someone's writing in President Biden. What's the point where you're like, this person didn't mean President Biden, when you're looking at their name?
We encourage all voters, if they're going to write in a name, to write in the full name of the candidate and fill in the oval. And if they do that, they know that their vote is going to be counted. If the moderator is charged with trying to decipher write-in votes that are not complete, and the standard that is used is, first of all, what was the voter intent? And then the second thing is it more likely than not that that is the candidate that voter was trying to vote for? So if somebody simply wrote in Biden, for example, even if they spelled Biden phonetically, the moderator would most likely count those as votes for Joe Biden. If somebody simply wrote Joe on the ballot, there may be other candidates on the ballot whose names are also Joe. And so it would be difficult to say that it's more likely than not that was meant for the president.
What processes are currently being incorporated tonight to protect against voter fraud?
Well, in New Hampshire, the voting process is open, very open and observable. And so from the time that the polls open in the morning until the time that the polls close and the counting takes place and the final results are announced and posted at the polling place, that entire process is observable. We keep track of all of the voters that go through the polling place and cross their name off the checklist. The individuals that serve as ballot clerks are appointed by the political parties. So there's a Republican sitting next to a Democrat. One is handing out the ballot while the other is crossing the name off the checklist. They're keeping track of each other, and they're also observing generally what's going on in the polling place. At the end of the night, when the moderator announces the results, they're posted so that everybody can see the results that are on display at that location. And then the moderator fills out a paper return of votes form and signs it at the polling place. And then the state police will come and pick those returns up. They're sealed in envelopes, and they're delivered to my office, the Secretary of State's office, very early the following morning. And then we open those returns. Again, that's a public process. The results on those returns are the same as the ones posted in the polling place. And we use those numbers to aggregate all of the numbers statewide so that we can announce the official results.
Now, of course, the state is going against the Democratic National Committee and holding a primary before South Carolina. How would you feel as Secretary of State if the results of the Democratic primary literally do not count?
Well, they do count. And the election that is taking place in New Hampshire is to award delegates based on the voter preferences. But it is more important to the voters of New Hampshire that they have the opportunity to speak out about who they believe should be the nominee as represented from the state of New Hampshire. And that is announced. It's carried well, reported very well in the press. And the delegates that are awarded to those candidates will go to the Democratic National Committee convention. And it will be up to the convention to decide whether they let them in the door or not. If all of those delegates end up being for Joe Biden because his write-in campaign is successful here, I think it's going to be a very embarrassing moment for the Democratic National Committee if they don't acknowledge those individuals that were elected by a legitimate vote. You know, this primary today is New Hampshire's presidential nominating event. There will be no other, and it's our voice in that process. And we have always believed that it should be the little guy, the average person on Main Street, you know, the average voter that has to say in who the nominee is, and not have that nominee dictated by the national party elites, so that the voters really have no voice in the outcome. That's what's going on here, and that's what New Hampshire represents. And we feel very passionately about that and the role that we play.
Going off of that, you know, there are a lot of people, including Democratic primary, calling for the New Hampshire primary to come after South Carolina, a state that a lot of people are saying is more representative of the country. Is it time for a change? It sounds like you disagree.
Well, I absolutely disagree. And the issue has come down to racial diversity. And that's the reason why New Hampshire should be moved back, because we're predominantly white. But there is no state that accurately reflects the makeup of America. And there is no state that is more American than any other state. But the racial diversity issue is completely missing the point. The reason New Hampshire is important is because we're a small state geographically and population-wise. You don't need a lot of money to run a campaign here. You don't need a lot of name recognition to run a campaign here. And it is very easy to get your name on the ballot. New Hampshire is probably the remaining place where that person that had the fourth grade dream of growing up to be president of the United States can actually try and make it happen here. It's like the audition phase of American Idol, where, you know, the contestants show up, you know, they think they might have some talent, they want to give it a shot, and New Hampshire is the place where that happens. There's 24 candidates on the Republican ballot. There are 21 candidates on the Democratic ballot. Most of them you have never heard of, but they are genuine, they're sincere, they believe they have something to offer the country, and they're willing to put it on the line. And New Hampshire is a place where that can happen. And that's what we do here that is not recognized by the rest of the country, but it is an incredibly important role.
Is there anything else about the primary, about the voting process you would like to tell our audience today?
It's grassroots. I mean, our elections are actually run at the local level by locally elected officials they're elected by their neighbors and their peers. And there are at least 8 of them in every community. And, you know, they are elected because of their honesty and their ability to do the job. And it is grassroots at its best. It's not a perfect system, but it works really, really well.
New Hampshire Secretary of State David Scanlan, Secretary Scanlan, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Nice to be with you.